Hello, my name is Michelle Hobb, and I'm a speech-language pathologist and the leader for the Meadowlark Special Programs. I'm glad you're joining me today for this edition of Memory and Engagement Opportunity for Wellness. The purpose of this opportunity is to work on engagement and attending. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about attention. We're also going to do some learning and exploring and even test our memory a little bit for remembering what we see and hear. Let's start off by reviewing our homework from last week. If you weren't here last week, that's okay. Not a problem. I'll give you a little run through. Last week, we talked about that phenomena of what am I here for? Why did I come into this room? We all know we've done that before. Maybe multiple times a day, maybe just once in a great while. Sorry, can't get those words out. But it's something that happens. And the reason that happens is because we're not paying attention. So last week we discussed how do we pay attention? Well, we have to completely become absorbed in what it is that we're thinking, feeling, hearing, smelling, tasting, whatever that sensory component might be. And then we need to say what we need to do aloud to help us to remember, to truly process, attend, and remember what it is we're doing. So part of your homework was to talk to yourself throughout the week. When you had something that popped into your head and you needed to go and do something about that, say what it is that you have to do. So I hope that you took advantage of that opportunity to talk to yourself last week, and that you found that truly can and does make a difference in your ability to walk from one room to another and remember why you went into that room. So the other thing that we did last week, which I think is really important for us to review again, is that we watched a video about memory and attention and talked about how our brain and our body can cause us to not be able to pay attention very well. So two of those things that can interfere are stress and depression. So in review, if we have some stress, a little bit of stress, it can often heighten our ability to pay attention. However, chronic stress that we cannot seem to get over or that's constantly within our world, that can break us down in our ability to focus and attend on the things that we need to. Also, depression is something that can significantly interfere with our ability to attend. When we are depressed, we are more focused internally. We're thinking about how we feel, how we don't feel, how our body and our mind are challenged by these chemicals or by our behaviors or emotions that we're having. And so it makes it very difficult for the brain to physiologically attend. So we need to work on and talk with our physicians if we're experiencing chronic stress or depression, and in order to get some help and support for those so that we can wipe those out to work on increasing our engagement, work on exercise, and work on nutrition. These are the three big elements that are going to help us in the big scheme of our lives to be able to improve our attention. Okay, so big scheme, lifetime kinds of issues, engagement, exercise, and nutrition can all help us with attention. But when we look at a daily activity of attention, we need to look at what this looks like. So how can we work and practice attention? So what we're going to try first off here is doing some visual attention. And in previous sessions, it's been a little while now, several weeks if not more, we talked about scanning when we're working on visual attention or visual processing. And so what we do with that is we scan, just like we learned when we were growing up and we've used throughout our life to scan from left to right and top to bottom. So working on a consistent scanning process. The other thing that we want to do when we're trying to pay attention and really focus on our visual memory is to try to make sensory connections. So when we're scanning from left to right and top to bottom, what kinds of sensory connections can we make with our visual stimuli? Is it something that we think we can feel as we're looking at it, taste, smell, hear, any of those types of sensory components that might help us to make that connection to a memory will help. And thirdly, you knew it was coming. I'm a big proponent of talking aloud. So as you're talking, you're motorically producing words, you're hearing those words, and then it gives you extra input and output as well. So we are going to scan, we're going to think and try to make sensory connections, and we're going to talk about what it is that we're looking at to help us with our attention. So here's our first activity. This is one of my favorite things ever, donuts. Not much better than a donut out there. And so what we're going to do is look at this picture, and then we're going to really focus in on the details, and we're going to then take away this picture and see what we're able to recall when it's gone. So I'm going to give you an example by talking about the top part here. So when I first look at this, it appears that there's some almost like a counter, maybe a grayish black counter that the donuts are resting on. And the first donut on the left is on a brown piece of paper. And then there's a chocolate donut on there with some sprinkles, probably powdered sugar, on the bottom half of that chocolate raised donut. Then to the right of that donut, the chocolate donut, is a white frosted raised donut with multicolored sprinkles, stars and maybe some stripes, bars, if you will, of orange and yellow and pink and blue and green sprinkles. Okay, so that is what I would do. I would be thinking about the raised donut, the chocolate frosting, the flavor of the frosting, the smell of the donuts, the texture of the donuts, the feel even of the counter. That I would feel that probably being a cold surface. And then I also would be thinking about the feel and the sound of that paper, the brown paper that the chocolate donut is on. So I'm going to give you just a couple seconds here, and I want you to take the bottom half of this picture and do exactly what I did. Talk aloud. It's okay if other people hear you, but talk about it just as I did. All right, so now let's go on to the next one. I hope you talked to yourself there. Okay, so now I want you just to take a little bit of time here, and I want you to re-describe. Tell me about the things that you saw, maybe felt from a sensory perspective when you were looking at those pictures. Well, that picture of those donuts. Okay, so now let's think about, we're going to take it one step at a time here. So when you were looking up here in this upper left corner, what were you seeing? What were you remembering? And then let's take the picture away and see how you did in your recall. Okay, how did you do? Did you get the majority of the things? If not, what was something that you left out? What was something that you forgot or overlooked? Okay, then let's go ahead and move on to the next square to the right. Again, moving from a left to right pattern. What was in that upper right corner? Go ahead and talk about it out loud. Even if you're the only one in the room, I don't care. I want you to talk about it. All right, and let's take a peek and see how you did with that one. Okay, how did you do? Did you remember the colors? Did you remember the shapes? When you think about from a sensory perspective, if you were biting into this donut, how might it feel different than the one on the left, only the chocolate covered one? Okay, maybe it gives you a little crunch, a little resistance there, some texture. Okay, so now let's take a second and move on down to the lower left corner. Talk out loud and tell me what you saw in your head, what you see in your head from memory. All right, and let's go ahead and look at that one. Okay, so we still had some of that paper, so you may have still been kind of thinking about the paper, some of the powdered sugar even a little bit from the other donut and from the brown paper. And then just maybe that this donut is a little bit more glossy appearing than the upper left donut. And how might that feel or taste, or what might be different about those two donuts? Okay, and finally, we'll take just a couple more seconds, and I want you to continue talking aloud to describe what is hidden behind the fourth box. All right, and let's reveal that one. And again, we still have some of the powdered sugar there and just a plain white frosted donut. And again, maybe even thinking about what it would feel like, the difference between how that powdered sugar might feel on the counter versus how it feels on the paper or the donut. So I hope that you are able to process that a little bit and think about what you could recall when you're focused and attentive, using your senses as well as your vision. Okay, so that's attention. You're doing a great attention exercise there. All right, so that was visual attention practice. Now let's talk about some auditory attention practice here. Sorry, I almost confused myself with my writing there. So what kinds of strategies can we use here? Well, when we hear things auditorily, we want to then rely and use both of our systems again. So we want to try to create a visual picture of what we are hearing. When we can create that picture in our heads of what we hear, it allows us to better remember the details that we're processing. Again, we can make those sensory connections. So if I were describing that donut to you without the picture, hopefully I would describe it in a sense that you would be able to create that visual picture of the donut, as well as some of those sensory connections, like what it might taste like, how its texture might feel. So how it might smell. So when I'm using auditory, I also still need to work on creating those sensory connections to enhance my recall. And finally, you guessed it, I want you to talk to yourself. So repeat it to yourself. Once I tell you what you need to remember, repeat it to yourself over and over, just like you do when you need to go from one room to another to complete a task. Repeat it to yourself. So let's practice a couple here. So I have a few sentences written down. So I'm going to read them. After I say it, I want you just to repeat it out loud. Okay, so again, remember, create the visual picture, make sensory connections, and repeat it to yourself. So the first one is, it is the beginning of summer. Okay, so repeat that to yourself. I'll say it one more time. It is the beginning of summer. Okay. So with that one, think about the picture. Think about any sensory connection you might have. The second one is, do you have bug spray? Okay, so creating that visual picture, creating that sensory component. Do you have bug spray? Okay, so repeat that aloud or to yourself multiple times. Okay, and the third sentence is, it is time to start exercising. So again, creating that picture, whatever that might look like for you, and creating that sensory connection and repeating it to yourself. It is time to start exercising. Okay, so how was that? Did that feel, were you able to repeat those? Did it feel pretty comfortable? Okay, so if it was challenging, take a step back and think about, could I hear? Was my room quiet enough that I could is it something in my room that's distracting me? What is it that I can do to correct my environment to allow me to be able to remember well? Okay, so let's go through those one more time. So the first one was, it is the beginning of summer. Okay. The second one, do you have bug spray? And the third, it is time to start exercising. Okay, so I hope you did okay on those. All right, so now we're going to continue on and we'll do a little bit longer sentences. Okay, so let's continue on here. Now I'm going to take the same sentences, at least part of those same sentences, and then we're going to add on to increase the complexity of those sentences. So your first sentence is, even though it is the beginning of summer, it is very hot and humid. Even though it is the beginning of summer, it is very hot and humid. Okay, so hopefully you were able to create that picture, create that sensory, and repeat that sentence. Okay, so let's look and see how you did with that one. Even though it is the beginning of summer, it is very hot and humid. Okay, so when you heard that one, what were you feeling? Kind of the stickiness that we're experiencing now. And I know that some people would argue it's not the beginning of summer, but it technically kind of is just the beginning of summer. If you go by June 21st being summer, still close enough. It's only a month in. Plus it fit my desires of creating this sentence. So next one we're going to do, same concept, create the sensory component, create the visual picture. The mosquitoes are really biting. Do you have bug spray? The mosquitoes are really biting. Do you have bug spray? All right, how did you do on that one? Hopefully, the ability to be able to create that visual picture was pretty simple with this one. Also, you could rely on that visual picture as well. Okay? So the next one then is working out helps our memory. It is time to start exercising. All right, so creating that visual picture, creating that sensory component connection, and repeating. Working out helps our memory. It is time to start exercising. Okay, so we worked a little bit on visual attention. We also worked a little bit on auditory attention. So what I want to see now is which was easier? Thinking about that, was visual easier to remember? Were you able to focus on just that sensory component? Or did you find auditory was more beneficial for you, that you then had two modes to help you remember? You could use what you heard and you could use what you created. Some people just are better at one than the other. But what I want you to do is really think about that and really process what we did today and see which one was easier for you. And then make sure that as you work throughout things, if you get a call from a friend or a child, that calls and says, hey, Mom, don't forget to do X, Y, or Z, make sure that you say, hey, wait, I need to get a paper and pencil and write this down. Okay, because maybe when you write it down, you incorporate your vision as well as your auditory, which then helps you to recall. Okay, so whichever mode you did better in, that's the mode that we really want to work on, and make sure that we tap into that strength to help us with our attention and our memory. What strategies did you use during this exercise? Obviously, I was pretty much prompting you with the creating the picture and the sensory components, but did you use any different strategies? How did they work for you? If they worked, keep doing that. Anytime you need to focus and attend, use those same strategies. If they didn't work, try the ones we did today again and work on making those habitual. All right, so we're moving on to the next section of our program. Usually we talk about some sort of a national day, and how we can, look back on, walk down memory lane, or just something kind of fun to do. Well, I found that there were two national days in a very close proximity that I really wanted to highlight. The first one was just a couple days ago, actually. So on July the 12th was National Simplicity Day. And what I found really kind of inspiring about this one right now is that what is important? What is important in your life? And really focusing in right now on this time in our history. This whole pandemic that we're experiencing, all of the other things within our current world are really challenging all of us in one way or another. It may not affect each of us in the same way, but it really is causing us to come back to simplicity. What is it that's truly important to us? Is it people? Is it things? Is it memories? Is it ideas or goals? Where do we place our values? Where do we want things to really carry the weight of our day-to-day life and our future? The other thing is that July 15th is National Give Something Away Day. So again, I felt like these two really played on each other nicely, because if we're truly thinking about simplicity, then it should be pretty easy to give something away. So thinking about giving something away, it could be a donation, right? It could be a purchase of something that you then give to someone else. Or it could be give something away of your own skill or time. In, again, this current pandemic, it makes volunteering a little bit harder, but we all have ways in which we can give to others, whether it's with our talent, our treasure, our time, our commitment, or just who we are. Just sharing who we are with other people is a wonderful way to give something away. And smiles are free, and it's so hard knowing that those masks interfere with our ability to share a smile with people. But I want to challenge you to use your eyes to smile. When we smile with our heart, our eyes light up, and it truly is the beauty of a smile. So I want to challenge you as you're meeting people in the halls or out on the walks or in the courtyard. Even though we're masked up, we need to share our smile through our eyes, because again, if you look in the eyes, you really see the heart of people. So take this opportunity to shine your true self to others by showing them the love in your eyes. So I want to share a little video that kind of talks a little bit about simplicity and giving something away and kindness.
A viral dashcam video out of Wisconsin caught a police officer's unexpected response to a student's excuse for his speeding. The kid tells the officer he's late for an important presentation in class and was only speeding because he'd had to stop by the house of a buddy who knew how to tie a tie. Unfortunately, as we can see, the buddy wasn't home, and the poor kid remains tieless. The officer takes the kid's tie and asks him to get together his license, insurance, and registration while tying it around his own neck. The officer counsels the student that one of his insurance cards is expired, then notices that the tie is too short. He'll have to do it again. The second attempt is a little long, but it'll have to do. He sends the student on his way with enough time to get to his presentation, and a newfound appreciation for police officers. When the Oakland Cougars and Logan Township Lions met for a game of youth football in 2013, the Cougars coach brought out a trick play he had been working on for some time. In fact, he had collaborated on it with the head coach of the other team. This might sound a bit unusual, but the whole plan revolved around a very unusual and very determined player. 10-year-old Jacob Steiner was a special needs student that had been taken under the wing of the coach and the entire football team. He had been playing in games all season long, but on this play you could see that the opposing players, with as much subtlety as they could muster, all allow themselves to be blocked, run the wrong way, or just fall down without being touched, all to make sure Jacob could know what it feels like to score a touchdown in a game, an experience he will certainly never forget. Greenville, South Carolina grocery store employee Brandon Rollins was going about a day like any other when he saw an opportunity to help. A frail, elderly customer half his size was making her way into the parking lot, and Brandon went out of his way to make sure she got where she was going safely. He took her by the hand and walked alongside her, not knowing that a customer was watching and shooting heartwarming video. Bo Graff posted his video to Facebook, where it quickly went viral and earned Brandon a spot on the local evening news. Bo told reporters that he had approached Brandon after witnessing his gesture of kindness to let him know how much it was appreciated, but that the kid had acted like it was simply no big deal, which, as Bo pointed out, is really the kind of attitude that the world needs to see. His Facebook post concluded, "This is what America should be, and hopefully this is the America of tomorrow." Employees at the Qdoba restaurant in Louisville, Kentucky take pride in going out of their way for their customers. Among their many regulars is a woman that employee Ridge Quarles describes as a very nice lady with disabilities who isn't able to get out of the house very often but loves to eat at her neighborhood Qdoba when she can. Employees know her order by heart, but one day when she was having a particularly tough time, she had an unusual request for Ridge. After placing her regular order, she asked Ridge if he might be able to help feed her, and the young man didn't think twice before agreeing. Several other customers noticed the exchange, and one shot some video, which he shared to social media. The big-hearted gesture brought local news to the friendly restaurant, but Ridge insists that he was only doing what anyone else would have done. U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Robert Riston was out for a bite at a local Taco Bell in Alabama when his opportunity to make someone's day a little brighter presented itself. He was approached by a couple of boys who were selling homemade baked goods to raise money for their family. When Robert asked the older boy, only 9 years old, if he had eaten anything that night, he answered no. But Robert didn't have any cash on him and the youngsters weren't in a position to take credit cards. So Robert brought both boys up to the counter and let them get anything they wanted to eat on him. The video was captured by a customer who decided that the heartwarming moment needed to be shared with friends. After going viral, Robert was interviewed by local news, telling them that the boys were just as much of an inspiration to him as he could ever be to them. He also mentioned that they thanked him not just for the meal, but for watching over and protecting them in his role as a soldier.
So, I hope you enjoyed that video. I know that the narrator spoke pretty quickly, but I hope that you were able to appreciate the really touching stories. I love how just kindness just transcended throughout each of those encounters. What I'd like you to do in your journal, again, each week we try to take a walk down memory lane and write in our journal or our log. And I'd like you to write this week about a special time that you gave something away. Maybe that was something that, whether it was a time or a talent or a treasure, what was something that maybe wasn't quite as important to you, but was really valuable and important to someone else. Again, it could be, like the soldier there. The money wasn't what was the important thing for him to give to those boys. Rather, it was the concept of sharing his appreciation for them and helping them to have their daily needs of food met. What was something that was a special time that you gave something away? The other thing that I hope that this brings, and we talked about this a little bit last week, is some gratitude. One of the things that we really need to focus on in these times of trials is the gratitude, the gratitude that we have for our well-being, our safety, whatever that may be, our friends, our family, our pets. But taking just a few minutes and being grateful for, being able to wake up and watch a show, being able to go for a stroll in the courtyard or down by the pond. What is something that you're grateful for? And finding that time every day to be grateful. So your homework this week, as in most weeks, is to move multiple times a day. The more we move, the better we are. So last week also, one of your homework assignments was this one here, where I wanted you to march in place, seated or standing, during every single commercial of your favorite show. So I hope that you did that. If you didn't, you have another week to try it out. It just gets more steps in, which brings more oxygen and blood flow to the brain and gets those muscles working. Continue to practice deep and focused breathing and finding time each day to attend to a task. The Messenger has some really great activities in it for you to do. Obviously there are different shows throughout the day, and even reading a newspaper and then writing about what it is that you read. And don't forget making those connections. Call, write, do whatever it takes to make a connection, a social, emotional connection with someone. And finally, I want to give it to you again. Talk to yourself this week. Tell yourself what you're doing, what you need to do, where you went, why you went there, where you're going, why you need to go there. Talk to yourself. And until next time, wear your mask, stay connected with others, and be well. I hope you had a great time today. I appreciate you spending some time with me each week, and I will look forward to sharing some more memory and engagement opportunities next week. Take care. Bye-bye.